Planning, reconnaissance, security, control, and common sense. These are the 5 principles of patrolling that, if we apply them to all areas of our life, can lead to success in everything that we do. Coming up. Hey, welcome to the channel, friends. As always, man, I'm stoked to see you. So coming at you down here from the banks of the Nisqually River on a beautiful, fairly warm morning, and wanted to come over and talk about the principles of patrolling and how they can actually be applied, as well as some different scenarios, and so that you can actually see how they walk through and then get put into use, whether we're talking about moving on foot or whether we're talking about even a business operation, right? I think these principles of patrolling are sound in principle, and if applied, they can lead to success in everything that we do. Hey, if you want to master your field craft and develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on some future content. So as we get going, so 5 principles of patrolling. So the first principle, planning, right? So planning is the first principle, and there's a reason that these are in the order that they're in. Everything, you know, when it comes to planning, everything begins and ends with assessment. Everything begins and ends in an assessment. So what that means is we need to assess where we're at, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. We need to assess where we're trying to go, right? We need to have that task and purpose. We need to understand what that end state is that we're trying to get after. We need to apply some operational variables, whether we're talking about that task and purpose, right, which is basically our mission. We need to understand what our threats are to what we're trying to get to. We need to understand the operational environment that we're working in. And we're thinking about terrain. We need to think about the weather considerations. We need to think about how much time do we have to actually conduct what we're trying to get done. What are the resources that I have? You know, myself, do I have anybody else who's with me? What are our assets that we all bring to the table? And is there any other considerations that might be out there? Maybe it made me consider more collateral assets or liabilities that are out there that we need to take into consideration. We need to take all this and start formulating and start analyzing what it is that we're trying to get done, right? From here, we need to start and move forward and kind of formalize a plan. And after we have a plan kind of solidified in what we're trying to do, then we move on to the next step or the next principle of patrolling, and that's to conduct reconnaissance. Now, reconnaissance or recon, you know, as we often shorten the phrase up to, is something that we kind of get wrong a lot of times. We think we only do reconnaissance to gather information or what should be intelligence prior to creating a plan. And while that's not untrue, we also need to conduct reconnaissance after our plan is complete to see if our assumptions are true about what we're going to expect, to see if our courses of action that we came up with are going to be appropriate for where we're trying to get to. That's what reconnaissance really does, is it proves the plan that we came up with in the first place. Proving that plan. Now, how can we conduct reconnaissance? There are a couple different ways, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. You know, we can conduct reconnaissance by looking at maps or topographical maps or any other kind of data that's out there. We can conduct reconnaissance. The best kind is boots on the ground, right? Coming out here, and if I wanted to fish this spot, I could look at weather data. I could look at you know, some past reports and look at what I can find out on a map as far as how quickly, you know, the flow rate should be. But nothing's going to be coming down here and looking at it with my own 2 eyes, right? Here I can see the flow rate. I can see some places where I may need to get out to in order to drop a line, right? So the best reconnaissance that we're going to be able to conduct is going to be on the ground. I can also talk to people who've been somewhere that I'm trying to go to before, right? Maybe they just drove that route. Maybe they've already created that product. Whatever it is, I can take those lessons learned and apply them to myself as well, right? After we've kind of finished our reconnaissance, the next thing that we need to do is we need to think about, and now we're executing, we need to think about how to control or to provide security to our patrol. How are we going to sustain operations? How are we going to maintain our cohesion? How can I react to circumstances that may happen around us? I need to think about my flanks, right? I need to think about what's happening to my left and to my right flank. I probably need to have some measure of maintaining security out here, beyond my line of sight. I probably need some security out towards the front, who can yell back and respond back, who can communicate to me what we're about to walk into. As well, I need some security behind me, because it's back here at our 6 that threats and dangers often will come up. So how we can provide 360-degree coverage to ourselves. It can be more of a challenge, if you're hiking by yourself, but you still need to think about security. Maybe you're out going on a hike and you just need your security ultimately is you, yourself, and maybe a can of pepper spray or bear spray. But you need to think about it. You again go back to all the assets that you had taken account for and taken stock of when you're planning for this mission. And you think about, how can I implement these in reality once boots hit the ground? In relationship to security, I need to think about how we're going to control. And security, by the way, is your number one priority of work. All the time, it never stops. Security is your number one priority of work. And the reason why it's the third principle is because you had to plan for that security, right? And you needed to conduct your reconnaissance to validate your plan. And that's why it's number 3. The fourth principle is control. How am I going to control that flow rate, that throughput? How much time do I have, and what kind of benchmarks and phase lines do I need to have set? What kind of rally points do I need to put? Some checkpoints that are out there. Some intentional places to stop. Because if we work too fast, if we go too hard, we will wear ourselves out. But if we work too quick, we can miss the mark. We may not pay attention to the details in the fabric of the terrain around us that we're operating in. So we need to think about how we're going to control these things, because ultimately we need to be able to sustain and maintain our operation throughout the endurance of anything that comes up or happens. It's not good enough to be able to run the short race. We have to be able to run the long race and have endurance at the end to continue to move on and move past that limit of advance if we have to, right? So how are we going to do this? How are we going to communicate with one another if I have multiple people on my trip? We can use whistle, we can use a phone, we're going to use some DMRs, or some form of tactical communication using radio frequencies. How are we going to control what we're doing? If I'm a subordinate, how can I listen to my senior? If I'm the senior, how can I respond to my subordinates? I have to think about how we're going to control. What kind of formations are we using? How do we adapt to the surroundings that we come across that we weren't planning on once we hit them? All kinds of variables, man. And last and most importantly, the fifth principle, common sense, man. And I've said it before, I'm a fifth principle kind of guy, right? Because it's the most important one. That's why it's at the end. Because it has to be interwoven through everything that we're doing. And that fifth principle is common sense. Sometimes I think that common sense is not all that common, right? And I think that's because the grind gets us, ultimately. I think I think we let all these other factors impact us in ways that we said that it shouldn't or that it wouldn't. And it kind of turns us into a hypocrite. We start to lose our common sense. We forget what it was like to be where we were after we get to where we are. I don't know, man. Sometimes I think we just need to take a step back, put a different hat on, and ask ourselves what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. Common sense isn't something that can be taught in a classroom environment. Ultimately, it has to be taught out here in your environment. What just makes sense? What does right look like? What's going to have the biggest bang for the buck, the biggest return on the investment for what we're getting ready to put in? Is the juice worth the squeeze, right? And I think, I can talk about this in a subsequent video, but it all comes down to those three questions that we all have to ask ourselves. And this directly relates to common sense, man, so hold on with me. Too many times we get caught up asking the what first. What am I doing today? What are you doing today? What do we have to get done? What's the task? And if that's where we start our questioning, we start to lose our common sense because we start chasing the end state and not living right. Because the next question is how, and the most important question is why, and that why has to come first, right? The why has to come first. Why are we doing what we're doing? And after we know that, after we have that nailed down, man, then we can figure out how we're going to do it. And then we can figure out what we're going to do to make that happen. And when we ask these three questions in the right order, common sense will prevail. But if we ask the what first, then in our mindset, in this brain housing group that we have, all this gray matter, it doesn't care about impact. It doesn't care about the toll that our decisions are going to make. So ask the why first. And I think as we think about these principles and what they mean and how to apply them, it's easy enough to think, on a dismounted patrol, how these things apply. But I think we can also apply them to a convoy. Maybe it's getting to and from work. Maybe it's a bug-out plan, right? How am I going to apply these principles to moving from my location to another predetermined location? If I take these principles and I apply them, I can think about how I'm going to, what kind of resources I need. I can plan this out, right? I have my primary and I have my alternate route. I have some phase lines set in along the way. I've driven the route back and forth during multiple times of the day. I know what to expect on the pattern of the traffic, both coming and going, on both the primary and that alternate route. So I've conducted that reconnaissance. I've proven that my plan should work. I know how to maintain security by using some common sense, right, as I'm driving, right? If dudes are following me and they make a couple too many turns, I have some techniques, tactics, and procedures that I can use to be evasive in nature should it come to that. I know how to maintain proper speed, so I know how to control my own flow rate. Because I don't want to draw attention to myself by driving too fast. I don't want to draw attention to myself by driving too slow. I have everything I need in my vehicle. I'm just going to use some dadgum common sense. Is this really the time? Is it really happening right now? Or am I just starting to lose my mind and I need to take off the tinfoil hat? It's easy enough to apply if we're getting ready to go on a hike, right? Start planning prior to, start calling ranger offices, start looking up online, dudes who've been there previously start looking at photos, image details. So we're planning and conducting a reconnaissance. Well, I know how far I can travel each day. I know what the total length is, so I know what the end state is. I know how much food I need along the way. I know what the weather's going to be like for the particular time of year that I'm getting ready to get out there. I know how fast I can walk. I know what my pace is, whether I need to maintain a 1 or 2 mile an hour pace, or if I need to speed it up to a 4 mile an hour pace. I know what I need for the threats that are going to be around me. Again, whether it may be some cougars or bears that may be around. Some insects, I have some first aid kit that's on my person. I thought about water intake, shelter. Maybe you're trying to operate a business. And you know what you know why you're doing what you're doing. And you start planning how you're going to do it and what you need to do. So you conduct some market research. You start formalizing and finalizing your plan of how you're going to get and reach your objectives. So you implement some different means of security. Maybe it's a patent that you've gotten secured. Maybe it's getting some stuff copyrighted. Maybe it's maintaining that throughput of the widgets that you're trying to make from the in to the out. And you remember that it's not all about the bottom line. That everything we do is a people business. And so you maintain a degree of common sense in everything that you're trying to put together. You see, no matter what we're doing, these 5 principles that if and when applied, can ensure that everything we do is successful. Hope you enjoyed the content of the video. If you did, make sure you like it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and click that notification bell so you can stay up to date on some future content. Leave some comments down below and let me know what you think about these 5 principles, if you've applied them in real life, maybe on a patrol, or if you just use them intentionally for something that you've done, or if you want to apply these to what you're getting ready to go do. We'll keep this conversation rolling. Everything that you leave down in the comments below, man, I'm gonna address and hit you right back up. And as always, until then, you stay stoked.